On today's show, the Rockets scrape by with a win against the Wolves thanks to a masterclass 39-point performance from Kevin Durant. But it is concerning that they needed that much scoring from KD in a game without Anthony Edwards for Minnesota. We're going to break it all down for you right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What is up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, the #1 sports podcast network. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets. On today's show, we're talking about the Rockets' 110-105 win against the Minnesota Timberwolves, a Kevin Durant offensive masterclass, 39 points on insane efficiency. Sheppard with a major spark off the bench, helping turn the tide of this game early, keeping things from getting out of hand early in this one, and a big-time double-double for Alperen Şengün going head-to-head with Rudy Gobert. We're going to break it all down for you on today's show. First, I want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you so much for being an everydayer. And joining us now is your weekly co-host, host of the B Block podcast and Sports Radio 610's Brandon Scott, who you can track down on Twitter at Brandon K. Scott. And B. Scott, it's been, maybe not been a minute, but because the Rockets just got the win against the Bulls, they got kind of thrashed by the Thunder, but it feels good to be able to talk about a Rockets win. Maybe not the best of wins, but a win is still a win. 110-105 against a Anthony Edwards-less Minnesota Timberwolves, and an absolute Kevin Durant masterclass in this game. Maybe a little bad that the Rockets needed a KD masterclass, and we'll talk about that, but the performance itself was impressive. 39 points, 11 of 18 shooting, 6 of 8 from downtown for KD. He joked with us post-game that he needs to be better about his free throws. He was happy that he had his three ball back and working, but 11 of 14 at the free throw, and he had a trip where he missed both free throws. I don't know how many times in Kevin Durant's entire career that he's gone to the free throw line and missed 2, but still put up an insanely efficient 39 points on less than 20 shots. It was a superstar night for Kevin Durant, and the Rockets needed every single one of those points to be able to scrape by and get this win.
Yeah, Jackson, beggars can't be choosers at this point, right? Beggars cannot be choosers, and wins have been hard enough for the Rockets to come by as of late. And points have been hard enough for the Rockets to come by as of late. And so, it is a little bit uncomfortable that you needed 39 from KD to beat the Anthony Edwards-less Minnesota Timberwolves by 5. It does feel a little bit uncomfortable that you had to lean on him in the way that they did. But this is part of the reason why you got Kevin Durant, for when you don't have answers offensively. And so often it has seemed like even with Kevin Durant, it seemed like they haven't had the answers. There hasn't been a proper flow, a lot of just, standing around. Ball gets real stagnant. And one thing that you can rely on is Kevin Durant to get you a good shot. And he did that throughout this game, was really good early, was really good late. As you mentioned, insanely efficient. And look, you'll take it. Again, like I mentioned, points, hard to come by. Wins, hard to come by. So it's going to be hard to really complain about a win, even when they are as uncomfortable as this one kind of was. And it was dicey there for a minute, but I do want to acknowledge Kevin Durant, really good offensively. I thought early, really good defensively as well. You remember, he would get stripped, but then he'd go down and he'd block the shot on the other end. I feel like that happened at least twice in this game. So just a really good all-around game for Kevin Durant, and just another example, a quintessential example of why it is that you would obviously want an all-time great like that on your team.
There were a few of those. I affectionately like to call them those clown fiesta sequences where like you get a turnover and then an egregiously missed shot and then another turnover or a block, and it's just like it's back and forth and you're like, well, it's like watching a tennis match. Sometimes
Rudy Gobert ripped him. Rudy ripped his dribble,
ripped him and then went the other way and got stuffed at the rim. So yeah, there were more than a few of those in this game, and it certainly felt like kind of a bit of a back and forth affair. The pace, the tempo certainly kind of felt like it picked up as the game bled on. And I think one thing that does stand out is, even though the Rockets, I think one thing is that is encouraging, right, about Kevin Durant's production is getting, Kevin Durant can get these types of games, right? It's not, I don't want to say like extra effort for KD to be able to put up 39 because frankly, with the way this Rockets offense kind of looks on a night to night basis, it's better for him to take more of these shots. Like I think there's a world where Kevin Durant you could argue that he should be taking 25 shots a night for the Rockets. And Kevin Durant's never been that kind of like absurd volume shot taker, I guess, in his career. But given how desperately this Rockets team does need quality offense, there's a lot to be said for getting as many shots for easily your best offensive weapon on the entire roster. And some of that kind of boils down to, finding maybe some more creative ways to be able to get KD off the ball and get him, playing off ball and playing off of, Şengün and maybe Reid Sheppard a little bit, things like that. Still working on the chemistry between all those guys, finding different ways to utilize Kevin Durant. But I do think that there is to your point about the concern of needing 39 points from KD against a antless Wolves team. There's also the concern of kind of, running him into the ground a little bit here, right? This is another game where Kevin Durant plays 40 minutes. And this was like the complete opposite of what we kind of hoped the Rockets would be able to do with KD coming into this season, right? Not taxing him too much in the regular season, hoping that you can, kind of preserve him a little bit and maybe avoid running him into the ground or running the risk of losing him due to an injury, which has happened, kind of at various points throughout his career, specifically with the Suns last year, right? They needed so much production out of Kevin Durant on a night-to-night basis to just be a like 500 team. And he winds up getting an injury, misses like, a quarter of the season, whatever. If the Rockets lost KD due to an injury because he's playing so many minutes every single night, this season might be cooked. Like that's kind of how frustrating the offense has been at times without him on the floor.
Yeah. So in this game, just to be honest about it, really only 4 guys showed up offensively. Now I think it was a collective effort on the defensive end of the floor, and that started to pick up. We saw, I thought, in the second and third quarters, but I mean, you had Kevin Durant, who we mentioned had an insanely efficient game. Alperen Şengün had sort of a typical game. And then you've got Reid Sheppard off the bench. Amen Thompson I thought he started off really well and then kind of cooled off a little bit. But these are your only guys in double figures. These are the only guys that are really contributing for you. And then I thought that like at the end of the first quarter that it was Kevin Durant, and I know we're going to talk about Reid Sheppard, but without these guys basically saved their tails, man, because they didn't have really anything going. And again, you just go to Kevin Durant, it's kind of old reliable, but to the point of it being like too reliant on him. One of the things, Jackson, that I liked the most about them getting Kevin Durant was that I thought he was entering a situation unlike any other that he had been in. And in terms of how much he would be relied upon, like it was sort of more so of like a closer type of thing. But hey, you could rely on some of these younger players that you have developed over the last few years to kind of really carry the team. And then Kevin Durant is sort of your fixer or your answer when you don't have any. But he shouldn't be like your only lifeline or your main lifeline, in the way that he has been, or certainly the way that he was on this night. So this is the disappointing part of it for me. Is as much as I'm glad to see them win the game and a win is a win and all of that, my vision of the way the Kevin Durant era, the Kevin Durant experience would look like for the Rockets was not this. It was not a running him into the ground. It was not a 40-minute night. It was not needing 39 points from him just to beat, again, an Anthony Edwards-less Wolves team by 5. That is not the vision that I had. I'll take the win, and I know the Rockets will take the win, but it definitely leaves a little bit to be or a lot to be desired, and something for them to think about on how they'll get easier buckets. Because this is really my thing too. Everything seems so difficult. Even KD's shots, and we're just fortunate. I think the Rockets themselves and Rockets fans are fortunate that he's just so excellent, and so he can make difficult shots. He can get to spots in ways that everybody is not able to get to, and like in special ways. But it seems like everything is just so difficult. They talked a little bit about the quality of shots that they got tonight, but it just seems just a little bit harder than it needs to be, and so that's the frustrating part. But certainly having Kevin Durant kind of makes it kind of makes it feel a little bit better.
Rockets offense just feels like pulling teeth sometimes. It's just bad sometimes. But coming up, we'll talk about one of the players giving this Rockets offense a little bit of life, and that's Reed Sheppard with his spark off the bench, the flurry there in the first quarter to get the Rockets kind of back into this game as things looked like they were off to a rough start for this team. We'll also talk about Alperen Şengün's big time 25 and 14 against BPOY Rudy Gobert and other thoughts from this game. We'll get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by DoorDash. The season's heating up, and DoorDash has a way to keep fans in their bag the whole way through. Whether you're watching the highlights, the tunnel fits, or just for your favorite player, DoorDash makes the entire season more fun because every player has their bag. With DoorDash, fans have one too. DoorDash keeps your snack stocked, your gear fresh, and your watch party vibes absolutely immaculate. Because look, there are those late night interviews and nights when your team might just stress you out a bunch. Let DoorDash become your post-game therapy. From tip-off to overtime, stay in your bag and order on DoorDash. Get snacks, drinks, gear, whatever gets you through the season, delivered right to your doorstep. DoorDash, in your bag all season long. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, B. Scott, this is another game where Reed Sheppard comes in off the bench and immediately makes his impact felt in a huge way with that absolute flurry of three-pointers that he hit in that first quarter. He hit 3 threes in the span of less than 3 minutes. That's a 3 per minute from when he checked in. And when he checked in, Rockets looked like they were dead in the water, right? They were down 24-15. Actually, I apologize. Down 24-15 when he checked in. But then, Naz Reid hits another 3-pointer. They're down 27-15, down double digits. Things aren't looking great. And then suddenly you get this Reed Sheppard flurry of threes that pulls the Rockets back into the game in a rapid fashion. And then Amin Thompson just added one for good measure at the end of the first quarter, which, side note, I don't like almost any three that Amin Thompson takes. Like, it's just, those aren't his shots, and they're not his shots for a reason. So when he hits one, it's like, great, but then you're just like, he shouldn't be taking him in the first place, unfortunately. But this
one was a contested three on a Reed Sheppard assist, by the way. But a contested three at that, hand in the face, and just jade him. Like, what? It
was. And so look, those shots every so often, I guess, are good for Amin's confidence. I still don't like it. I won't like it until it feels like he's a more reliable shooter. But I digress, right? The Reed Sheppard flurry of threes, it really felt like he came out and he kind of joked about it post-game with us, saying that it's always good when the first one drops, when the first one goes in. But it's just, it feels like every time you get this version of Reed Sheppard, I know he's still young. He's essentially still a rookie when you go by like total games played at the NBA level. And so he's been kind of wildly inconsistent. But at the same time, the ceiling on this team is so much higher when he's on the floor, offensively in particular, right? And I know that there's shortcomings defensively, and we'll talk about that in a moment, I'm sure. But it just feels like the sooner that this team can kind of recognize that and just embrace that the better off they will ultimately be as we navigate this season. Because to your point, right, in the first segment, Reed can be kind of one of those guys that can take a little bit of that scoring burden off of Kevin Durant, right? We've seen him. He has absolutely fried the Golden State Warriors and the Nuggets. Like, a guy that good, you don't just accidentally cook those teams in big time wins. Like, that is skill. That is, basketball ability on display. And it's just a little peculiar to me, right? That we have this Rockets team, this coaching staff with Ime Udoka, right, who has him on such a short leash. And like, I get it. Ime's a defensive guy. There are defensive lapses or moments where Reid is like a cone defensively, or he gets beaten too easily. But I guess one of my big takeaways is that I would hope that a defensive minded head coach, a defensive mastermind, a guru on that side of the ball, like an Ime Udoka, would be able to find ways to scheme for keeping a guy like that on the floor, as opposed to letting him get played off the floor, at least in Ime's eyes, letting him get played off the floor because of any perceived defensive shortcomings, especially given how valuable he seems to be offensively, especially when the shot is dropping. But I think Reid even provides value when the shot isn't dropping, because the passing is still there. The ability to read the floor is still there. And even when his shot isn't dropping, the scouting report still treats him like a shooter. And it's absurd watching how much more space this team has to operate with when he's out there.
Yeah, it's the last part that you said for me. It's even when the shot's not falling. Remember I said earlier that beggars can't be choosers? Well, there was a point here in the season where the Rockets offense was among the better in the league, and they were shooting threes better than most people and all of that kind of stuff, right? Well, it's been a struggle as of late, and beggars cannot be choosers. They can't put the ball in the bucket, and this is one guy that can, just like flat out. So like, to me, you've got to figure out a way to live with it and to compensate for it in some form or fashion. Like, to me, he just offers way too much offensively, like what you're talking about with the scouting report. Man, whether he's hitting those shots or not, and he obviously was, this game is probably not the best example because, like you mentioned, he hits the first one, hits three in a row, hits the first three, and so now they got a guard different. But they know the scouting report. They know why Reid Sheppard. They look at him and can tell why he's out there. This 6'2" guard who's still like growing into his body. What's he out here doing? Because he can shoot the daylights out of it. And so that's what they're going to guard for. And to me, it just kind of opens, like you say, the spacing, but it also just opens things up overall for your offense, and kind of can allow other guys to do some things. And then his passing is really good, as you mentioned as well. So he's just overall a plus offensive player. And like you mentioned, you should, between Ime as a defensive mastermind, as we put it, and then the team overall built to play defense. Like, just everybody, there's nobody else really on the team that plays bad defense, I would say, for the most part. So like, you should be able to make up for that, especially when he's offering you something that the rest of the team just simply does not offer. And just quite frankly, they don't win the game tonight without him. So, it's one of those things. It's like, what are you willing to live with? Are you willing to live with Kevin Durant, Alperen Şengün, and that basically being it for you offensively, and then just like sacrifice whatever Reid offers you offensively because he can't play defense? Or are you willing to live with, hey, we're one of the better defensive teams in the league, both schematically and personnel wise. We can figure this out. We need offense. And to the earlier point, we need to take some pressure off of Kevin Durant if we expect him to last and be able to do the things that he's doing for us tonight, to be able to do those things when the season is on the line, when it's the playoffs time and all of that kind of thing.
And I think some of it, right, is there, it does put kind of the onus on the other four guys out there to help kind of do a little more defensively, right? Be a little bit more active, be a little bit more aware, be a little bit quicker on switches, be a little bit more, proactive about, scramming Reid out of bad situations, right? Not leaving him on an island if there are switches, or finding different ways where, okay, if a team is trying to hunt for Reid on a switch, then maybe you blitz the ball handler, right? Instead of allowing the switch so easily, because he's not a guy that can be switched 1 through 5 and can hold himself, on his own on an island defensively yet, unfortunately. Hopefully he can get there one day where he's just, a little bit more, straight up and able to defend without fouling. That was a big thing that Ime Udoka talked about post game, right? Is that, for as far as Reid's defensive development is just, Reid tries to, tell him to just kind of at times not gamble, right? Not play, not try and, swipe at the ball or reach for it. He's got good instincts and he's got quick hands, but he does foul a little bit, right? And sometimes he just needs to play a little bit more physical, take those bumps in the chest and be a little bit stronger, guarding guys one-on-one. And I asked him that post game as well, right? And he acknowledged that, and he understands that he's got to kind of, toe the line between trying to figure out where he could kind of make plays defensively, but where he just needs to improve and just be more physical. And I think the last thing that he said to me, right, and his answer was like, just need to be able to straight up guard. Like, he knows defensively that he's like kind of dragging a little bit on that end, right? And it's going to get better. Like I have no doubt that as Reid kind of grows into his grown man body, if you will, that he'll get better defensively. If Fred VanVleet can be a plus defender at his size in the NBA, right, Reid will be able to add another 5, 10, 15 pounds of muscle over time and then not be so easily tossed around on the defensive side of the floor. And he's got the IQ and the mentality, the aptitude for doing it when you pair it with the quick hands, all that stuff. It's just a little rough around the edges right now, which is why I just wish that Ime would just take the lumps of it right now, especially in a season that I'm not going to call this season a wash, but if this Rockets team wants to have any semblance of a hope at a deep playoff run, aside from any kind of break glass in case of emergency type trade to go get yourself a legitimate floor general, a legitimate point guard, Reid's the closest guy you got. So you might as well lean into it, embrace it, start figuring out how to scheme around it right now, instead of the stuff that we saw in this game where Reid was by far your second best offensive player in the first half of this game. And Dorian Finney-Smith and Jae'Sean Tate saw second half minutes before Reid. I was losing my mind waiting for Reid to check. There were Rockets fans clamoring for Reid to start the second half because of how good he was in the first half. And I was thinking to myself, I was yeah, that would be a warranted decision given how good they looked with Reid out there on the floor. And then he didn't play until the 3-minute mark of the third quarter. It's tough, man. It's tough.
It was baffling. And even now when you're looking at it, and you see the minutes distribution, right? There was a point where even when Josh Okogie is starting and Reid is coming off the bench, they still play a close to the same amount of minutes. And even Reid would kind of play a few more. And I'm looking at it today and it's Josh Okogie, 33 minutes, Reid Sheppard, 18 minutes, 41 seconds. And you're wait a minute though. One was plus 11. One was second
highest plus minus on the team behind KD at plus 15.
Yeah, exactly. So what are we really doing here? What kind of time are we wasting here in this discrepancy? And so, and credit to Josh Okogie and others who again, it was an overall team effort defensively. And I feel that's the reason why you saw as much of Okogie and Dorian Finney-Smith as you did. But again, they just aren't offering what Reid Sheppard is offering you. And it's the place where you need it the most. The defense is there. Sometimes it's touch and go. I wish that the defense, even the defense, would be more consistent. I would prefer, but we know that the defense is there. The thing that we don't know is there is the shooting, both just knocking down shots, creating shots for yourself and others. He can do both. The other guys can't necessarily, and certainly not to the level that he can. So that part was really odd, considering that they've struggled the way that they have offensively, and he came in there and gave them an instant spark in the first quarter. So, and I suspect it is because he was getting hunted defensively, because he can be had defensively. There was one possession where I looked up and he ended up on Naz Reid, and I'm yo, what is that's somebody messed up there, because somebody should recognize that and say, no, this cannot be ever, right? And so it's just one of those things where it's hey man, to your point, we got to go out there and try to compensate for what he's lacking defensively and absolutely lean into what he offers on the offensive end of the floor.
I have a follow-up to that point that you just made, and I also want us to get into, we'll talk about Alperen Şengün's big night, the 25 and 14, going directly at Rudy Gobert on multiple occasions, as well as some additional thoughts on the defense and final thoughts from this Rockets 110-105 win against the Wolves. We'll get there in just one moment. First, today's episode was brought to you by FanDuel. Fridays already feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Fridays from 6 to 7:30 Eastern have become appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. Opening the FanDuel app during Happy Hour always brings something new, different bonuses, boosts, and surprises. It's awesome. Go check it out. 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. So before tip-off, check out the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every single Friday. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Now, B. Scott, the point you were just bringing up there a moment ago, that's what I kind of going back to what I said, how it puts the onus on the other four guys to be a little bit more attentive defensively, to try a little bit harder defensively. I feel like at times this Rockets team defensively, they very lazily just kind of like in transition in particular, that it's like, I'll just grab whoever, right? Because they generally switch a lot of their actions. So they're just kind of like, hey, you take whoever, I'll take whoever, whatever. When Reid is out there, you cannot be okay with Reid Sheppard picking up a wing or a big in transition, right? That's not good. That's an immediate mismatch. That's an immediate liability on defense. And that has to do with, frankly, just the effort and sometimes laziness of the other four guys on the floor. If they're just like, well, I'm close enough to, I'm really close to Dante DiVincenzo, so I'm going to pick him up, right? Or I'm really close to Jalen Clark, so I'm just going to guard him. But if you pick up, if Kevin Durant picks up Jalen Clark, then suddenly Reid Sheppard has to guard, I don't know, Jaden McDaniels or picks up Julius Randle or whatever. And that can't happen, right? So it's like little kind of like attention to detail, game plan, discipline, things like that, where I agree wholeheartedly with you, right? The defense can improve in that regard. I will say, though, that one encouraging thing about where the Rockets are kind of at least at this point in the season, is that when the Rockets do defend, right, which they've shown that they have been capable of it. Things were a little touch and go, I guess, kind of like earlier in the season, right, because they really were maybe kind of at times over reliant on that insane offensive production that they started the year with, and it kind of felt like the defense was very absent for stretches of the early part of the season. They're 16-1 when they hold teams to less than 110 points. And teams are only averaging 106 points over the past 12 games. Now, again, a few of those opponents have broken that 110 threshold, specifically like OKC and a few others. But it is encouraging seeing that this team has kind of found a bit more of a consistent ability to defend at a higher level than what they had earlier this season. It kind of feels like a twofold thing where it's like earlier in the year, some of their losses were because they couldn't defend, but the offense was great. And now they're able to kind of rely on the defense once again, which is cool. But the offense has just hit like an all-time low, which is like the craziest shooting slump in the world. And I think somebody post-game asked about like the team shooting better or whatever. I don't know. I don't know who asked about the team shooting better post-game. But then I kind of like looked down at my box score and I was like, the team did not shoot better. Kevin Durant and Reid Sheppard shot better because they shot a ridiculously combined 10 of 14 from three. That's absurd. That's scorching hot from three. The rest of the team was 2 of 14 from downtown. So it wasn't a team effort actually sinking the three ball. It was a Kevin Durant, Reid Sheppard effort sinking the three ball, with KD shooting 75% from downtown. Like, unfortunately, that's just not sustainable, right? And you start to look at the other guys on the roster, right? And you know what? We'll get final thoughts on this. I want to focus on. I'm going down a rabbit hole that I don't want to get to yet. I want to stick with some positivity for a moment before I go harping on somebody else. But Alperen Şengün, at least, a bit more of a return to form for him since coming back from being sidelined with the ankle issue. 25 points, 14 rebounds, 3 assists, 11 of 22 shooting. Had one of the most important sequences of the game, which was, taking it straight to Rudy Gobert's chest. Bodied him completely out of the picture and tried to dunk it. And it would have been like an incredible, highlight reel play. And it kind of still was, but he got a little hung on the rim and the ball still managed to go in. And then immediately on the other end, right, Kevin Durant is playing some tough nose defense, forces, I believe it was Jaden McDaniels into like a tough kind of angled like drive or cut or whatever. Şengün gets a deflection on the pass, dives on the floor for the loose ball, recovers it, gets it up to Amin Thompson. He kicks it ahead to KD. KD whips it ahead to Jabari for a wide open dunk in transition. And that sequence and those back-to-back buckets, right? The Şengün bucket on Gobert and then the Jabari open dunk in transition, in a game that was, at that point, I think it was only a 2 or a 3 point game. Like it was like only a 1 or 2 possession game at that point. And it gave them some life, right? It gave them some much needed energy at that point in the game. And it's kind of moments like that, right? Guys diving on the floor, going after loose balls, playing physical, right? Making plays happen defensively. That has been something that's kind of been missing from this team this season compared to last year, right? Is just it feels like they don't make enough plays on defense to then ignite their fast break, their transition offense to be able to kind of, circumvent the fact that their half court offense has been less than ideal for the, past month or so.
Yeah. Underrated part of this game with me would be that Alperen Şengün looked closer to like Alperen Şengün, probably, for the first time since coming back from the injury. Like the focus is going to be Kevin Durant because of his 39. The focus is going to be of Reid Sheppard because of what he provided off the bench. The focus, like, is even a little bit on the negative side of how laborious it was to get to this win. Like how hard it was to get to this win, and one that it felt like you probably should have been able to do it with a little bit more ease than that. But underlying here is, to me, Alperen Şengün, specifically his second half, 7 of 11 from the field in the second half, and to your point about putting Rudy Gobert in the rim or under the rim, like that was the strategy. I mean, I loved how he attacked Rudy Gobert and the fact that he was just as aggressive as he was. Like, I thought that was also really, really key for the Rockets in terms of kind of turning this thing around, just sort of underrated because, it was kind of like the stat line is kind of a expected Sengun game. Like, sure, he had 25 and 14, but the way it looked, and especially compared to how it had been looking since he had come back from the injury, this is the best that it's looked. So to me, that's one of the ultimate positives that you can take away from the game without any caveats, right? It's like, yeah, Kevin Durant scored 39, but why did it have to take so much? Yeah, Reid Sheppard was great off the bench, but why didn't they play him more? And his defense sucks and all of this kind of stuff. And there is no ifs, ands, and buts about the Alperen Şengün performance that you got. I thought he was really good. And
actually, no, I'll give you two. I feel bad you saying that. I've got two caveats.
well, the free throw. He missed 6 free throws, and one
caveat.
And he also had one of those Kevin Durant trips where he missed 2 as well. And it wasn't long after Kevin Durant had missed his 2. They were pretty close together. So
he had 2 trips where he missed 2, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, because he had 6
that would
misses.
make sense then. That would make sense why he missed 6.
But it was not only the free throw shooting, right? But it was also, in particular, and this is just kind of like just a general kind of observation, but in particular, right, that play where he bumped Gobert off, got hung on the rim. Alpy is not necessarily, Alpy is not the most athletic dude in the universe, but the guy can get up and dunk, right? And I genuinely don't think he's playing at 100% right now. It doesn't look like he's playing at 100%, especially the way that he's moving defensively, unfortunately. There were a handful of possessions where he was guarding Julius Randle and not really moving the best, trying to keep up with him. And credit to Julius Randle because he had weirdly enough, right? Randle and Naz Reid off the bench. Randle 39 points, Naz Reid off the bench 25 points, matched point for point the production of Kevin Durant and Alperen Şengün. KD 39 points, Alperen Şengün 25 points. So it's a good thing the Rockets stars showed up and did their jobs because you got a superstar performance from Julius Randle. Unfortunately, right, Rockets defense really didn't have an answer for him. 14 of 25 shooting, 9 of 11 at the free throw line, 2 of 5 from deep. Like, it was a really masterclass performance from Randle on the Wolves side. And then Naz Reid, 25 points, 5 of 7 from deep. I mean, he was cannon threes like 2, 3, 4 steps behind the 3-point line in this one. And sometimes those are just, hat tip. Okay, cool. You hit an absurd 3 with a hand in your face. Like, okay, cool, whatever. So they needed every bit of the scoring production from KD and Sengun, but there were definitely a few things from this game where and again, I don't think that's really like Alpy's fault, right? He's playing through injury, he's playing through discomfort, what have you.
He fouled out. He fouled out of the game.
Oh, but he fouled. Oh, dude, I'm so glad he fouled out on the most BS foul out that I could imagine. Because whatever the previous fouls, okay, cool. He's playing in foul trouble. He goes to set a screen, right? He's rolling to the rim. And Jaden McDaniels has his arms like draped all over Alpy. He's grabbing him, holding him, whatever. And Alpy has his arms straight up and down. And he's just trying to spin away from the contact that Jaden McDaniels had already initiated. And then he spins and his off arm like smacks Rudy Gobert in the face. And Gobert immediately just, I've been shot, whatever. Yeah. And embellishes the contact, and Alpy fouls out on that play. And
he had another one where he was just straight up. I'm trying to remember who it was that he was defending, but he was just straight up. I mean, he's just straight up. He doesn't kind of like.
Oh, it was the Randle one. Randle was falling down on a backwards kind of drive.
Yes,
and Randle like completely lost his balance, and Alpy was just moving backwards with him,
literally just standing there.
If Alperen Şengün got the whistle that Julius Randle got in this game, he would average 20 free throws a game. Like it was kind of ridiculous.
But would he have made them?
He have made them, right? He might have gone, what was 3 of 9? He would have gone 6 of 20, maybe 7 of 20. No, I don't know. That part's just like a mental discipline thing, right? Like which, speaking of mental discipline, I'm gonna take a moment here because I need Jabari Smith Jr. to lock in. I need Jabari to figure out whatever's going on, because I was one of the original Jabari truthers, and like I still am. I'm holding on for dear life at this point, but it's getting really hard on a day-by-day basis. In this game, 9 points, 3 of 12 shooting, 1 of 4 from downtown, 2 of 5 at the free throw line. There was that sequence where he gets fouled. He had already felt kind of, that he had been, fouled a couple times before this. So he gets fouled going to the basket, complains at the referee. He got the foul call. And whatever he said to the referee afterwards warranted a technical. So he gets teed up after he already received the foul. Like, he got the foul. You got what you want. Just shut up and go hit the free throws.
Yeah. Gets
the technical. So gives up the 1 point on that end, and then goes to the free throw line, bricks both of them.
Yeah.
Like, that is just a complete lack of mental discipline. And I like hung my head after that moment. I was like, come on, man. Like that just can't happen. And Jabari is one of those kind of X factors for this Rockets team. We talk about how much Reid Sheppard's offense can help elevate and lift this team and take some pressure off of KD and Şengün, right? They need Jabari to be able to score, to be able to win games. And if Jabari is not scoring the basketball, it's a miracle, right? The fact that he is still a plus level defender and can rebound at the rate that he does generally most games, because if he wasn't able to do those other things, he has no business being on the floor with how bad he has been offensively in recent memory. It's really unfortunate seeing the kind of rut that he is in offensively, because they need him to be able to win games.
Man, you didn't even mention the point blank bunny that he missed at the rim.
Oh, dude, the one he smoked right at the rim.
That was when I hung my head. And I think the sequence that you mentioned was actually the worst one, because the lack of focus, the cost of it, and then of course missing the free throws. I thought that was actually
swing early in the game, right? When they were already getting, struggling. So
that's definitely the worst sequence. But man, when he missed the point blank bunny, I just kind of hung my head, and I'm like, but I will say this to the Rockets' credit, even with Jabari struggling, they broke a tendency tonight. The Rockets, so when Jabari Smith shoots 50% from the floor or better, they win the game. So in their wins this season, he has shot 50% from the floor or better until tonight. In their losses, it was 34%. And so I'm looking at that, thinking in the game, like, okay, Jabari, man, if you shoot well, you'll win. If you shoot poorly, you'll lose. Well, he shot poorly and they were able to win anyway, but it does not dismiss the point that of how important it is that he knocked down shots. I talk about this all the time on here and with others. Like, a lot of his shots are, at least by design, to be open and to be, it's not like he's working for the shots the way Kevin Durant is or Alperen Şengün is. Like, the majority of these shots are makeable shots that he should be knocking down. And so it's really frustrating to see for him to not be knocking them down, right? So, like, you got to have better from him. I will give him a little bit of credit for as great as Julius Randle was in this game. I thought he had a couple of moments on him toward the end of the game that were really good defensively, which kind of a little bit compensated, but at the same time, you're there to shoot the basketball. You're there to be a shooter, and it has not been there. I've been defending Jabari mid-range shots all season, and after tonight, I had to concede that I'm on the wrong side of history on that. I'm incorrect. I'm wrong. And I'm not going to say they flat out need to stop, but to whatever degree that they continue, it needs to be much better.
Weirdly enough, I don't even know if I'm against like the Jabari mid-range. What I'm against is Jabari putting the ball on the floor in almost any capacity. He can hit the mid-range, but just get him on the low block. Like plays, get Jabari some touches in the non-Şengün minutes where he's on the low block, get him a post up or, right at the elbow, and let him go to work that way. Like, I don't know. I think there is something there with Jabari offensively, right? And clearly, like, this team needs him to be good offensively to be able to win games up until tonight. But at the same time, like, you know, when he is doing the most, when he's on the perimeter and he gets run off the 3-point line and he starts dribbling, that's when I immediately go, no. Like, let's not do all that. Because then that's when he gets into turnover, you know, territory. That's when, you know, bad decisions start happening, or when he's pressing, or, you know, somebody else picks him up and he takes, you know, one of those weirdly contested off the dribble twos where he's leaning, or he has to hang in the air forever to like avoid the defender. And those aren't like his shots in rhythm, right? Ultimately, Jabari, it's weird because this team went from, right, like, you know, essentially Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks as like your two like kind of role player, like volume 3-point shooters, like, you know, ancillary scorers to help supplement the scoring from Jalen Green and Alperen Şengün, into now those guys are Reid, Sheppard, and Jabari Smith Jr. And Reid has the ability to do that offensively, right? And he has that insane ceiling. We spent plenty of time talking about that, but he's not without his shortcomings defensively. And then Jabari has, you know, has his positives on defense, the size, the rebounding, all that, but he's got these like inconsistencies on offense. So it's suddenly you go from the two really consistent, really central forces of this Rockets team being Fred and Dylan, and you're expecting a lot out of Reid and Jabari to kind of fill those roles. And I don't think either of them have been able to like consistently do it at that level yet. And it's the inconsistency that has been really killing this team throughout this season. But we want your thoughts on this Rockets win. We want to know how you feel about the 110-105 dub over the Minnesota Timberwolves. Give us your thoughts on everything in the YouTube comments, your favorite moments from the game. KD was the best performance by far, but additional thoughts on the other individual performances from this game. Give us all your thoughts in the comments. B. Scott, you know the drill. Let everyone know where to track you down at.
Yeah, man. B Block Podcast on YouTube and wherever it is you get your podcast. Also on Sports Radio 610 on Wednesdays at 4:40 p.m. Central Time, and on Fridays from 11 to noon. Check me out.
That's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Rockets. As always, thanks so much for checking out the show. Remember, the best way to help us grow the show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing, and then like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. We look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.